They're your children, but sometimes it feels like they're your biggest challenge. The arguments, the disrespect, the constant negativity, it's exhausting. You love them deeply, yet their behavior drains your energy and tests your patience every single day. Here's the truth. You can't control everything they do, but you can control how you respond, and that response can change everything. In this video, I'll reveal the smartest way to deal with toxic children, not with anger, not with fear, but with strategies that protect your peace, rebuild respect, and create a healthier, stronger relationship. Understanding the root cause of toxic behavior. Before you can deal with toxic behavior in children, you need to understand where it comes from. No child wakes up and decides to be difficult just to make your life miserable. Toxic patterns often have roots, deep roots, that are connected to unmet emotional needs, environmental influences, or learned behaviors from others. Sometimes, these patterns develop because the child is struggling with something internally, anxiety, insecurity, fear, or even past experiences they haven't been able to express. When you take the time to look past the behavior and into the why behind it, your approach changes. Instead of simply reacting to the yelling, the defiance, or the disrespect, you start to see the signs of an unmet need or a wound that needs healing. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it gives you the insight to address it in a way that leads to lasting change rather than short-term compliance. Too many parents make the mistake of only focusing on controlling the behavior in the moment, raising their voice, grounding the child, or demanding instant respect. These methods might seem to work temporarily, but they rarely create a genuine change in attitude. In fact, if a child feels misunderstood or unheard, they often become even more rebellious or withdrawn. Think of it like a plant. If the leaves are turning brown, you can trim them off and make the plant look better for a while. But unless you address what's happening in the roots, lack of water, poor soil, or disease, the problem will come back. A child's toxic behavior works the same way. The outward actions are symptoms. The roots are where the real problem lies. Sometimes, the root cause may be something in the family environment, constant conflict, lack of boundaries, or inconsistent discipline. Other times, it might come from outside influences like friends, social media, or even bullying. There are also situations where the child has learned toxic patterns from watching others, maybe a sibling, a relative, or even a parent during moments of frustration. Children absorb what they see and hear far more than what we tell them. Your first task as a parent or guardian is to become an observer rather than just a disciplinarian. Notice when the toxic behavior happens. Is it after school? At bedtime? During moments when you're busy or distracted? These patterns give you clues. Keep your emotions in check and approach the situation with curiosity rather than anger. Ask yourself, what is my child trying to communicate through this behavior? When you understand the source, you can start addressing it from a place of strength and empathy. That's how real change begins, not with control, but with clarity, setting boundaries without breaking connection. Once you understand the root cause of toxic behavior, the next step is setting boundaries that are firm but still preserve the bond between you and your child. Boundaries are not about punishment. They are about teaching respect, safety, and responsibility. Without them, children can feel either out of control or overly powerful, both of which feed toxic behavior. A healthy boundary is clear, consistent, and calmly enforced. The mistake many parents make is swinging between extremes, either becoming overly strict and harsh or being too lenient and letting everything slide. Both extremes damage the relationship. Overly strict boundaries can make a child feel trapped and resentful, while a lack of boundaries can make them feel insecure and even more chaotic in their behavior. The smartest approach is balance. Start by clearly defining what behavior is acceptable and what is not. Use language that is simple, direct, and non-negotiable. For example, it's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to yell at or insult others. The goal is to separate the emotion from the action, acknowledging their feelings while making it clear that certain behaviors cross the line. Consistency is your strongest ally. If a boundary is enforced one day but ignored the next, children learn to test limits. They notice when you're tired, distracted, or emotionally drained, and they may push harder during those moments. That's why following through is essential. If you've set a consequence for crossing a line, it must be carried out every time. However, enforcing boundaries doesn't have to be aggressive. You can be calm and respectful while still being firm. When you respond with controlled energy instead of shouting or overreacting, you show your child that you are in charge of the situation, not your emotions. This is a powerful lesson. They see that strength doesn't come from volume, but from self-control. Another important element is involving your child in the process. When possible, let them have a voice in setting certain rules or consequences. This doesn't mean giving in to every demand, but it allows them to feel a sense of ownership over the structure you're creating. For example, if bedtime is a struggle, you might say, "We need you in bed by 9 o'clock. Do you want to start winding down at 8:30 with reading or at 8:45 after a snack?" The boundary, bedtime, is fixed, but the child has some choice within it. Boundaries are also an opportunity to teach life skills. In the real world, actions have consequences, both good and bad. When a child learns that crossing a boundary at home leads to a predictable outcome, they are better prepared for the structure and accountability of adult life. Remember, boundaries should feel like a safety net, not a cage. They are there to protect both you and your child, preserving the relationship while keeping toxic behavior in check. When done right, they not only curb negativity, but also create a space where respect, trust, and love can grow stronger. Communicating without escalating. When dealing with toxic behavior in children, the way you communicate can either calm the storm or fuel the fire. Many conflicts between parents and children don't actually start with what's being said, but with how it's being said. The tone, volume, body language, and timing all play a huge role in whether your child listens or shuts down. The first principle is to keep your own emotions in check. It's easy to match their energy. If they shout, you shout. If they roll their eyes, you raise your voice. But when you react emotionally, you lose control of the conversation. Your child then focuses on your reaction instead of their own behavior, and the original issue gets buried under the fight. Instead, practice lowering your tone and speaking slower when things get heated. A calm, steady voice sends a powerful message. You are in control of yourself, and you won't be dragged into unnecessary drama. This doesn't mean you're being passive. It means you're choosing strategy over impulse. The second principle is to listen as much as you speak. Toxic behavior often comes with a sense of not being heard. When a child feels ignored, they may act out even more, just to get attention, even if it's negative attention. Show them you're actually listening by reflecting their feelings back to them. I hear that you're frustrated because you think I'm being unfair. This doesn't mean you agree, but it shows you understand what they're expressing. Timing is also critical. Trying to have a deep conversation in the middle of an outburst is like trying to fix a leaking roof in the middle of a thunderstorm. It's not going to work. Sometimes the best communication choice is to step back, let emotions settle, and then revisit the discussion when both of you are calmer. This prevents unnecessary escalation and increases the chance of a productive exchange. Avoid sarcasm, personal attacks, or phrases that trigger defensiveness. Instead of saying, "You're always so disrespectful," focus on the specific action. "When you interrupt me like that, it feels like you're not listening." This shifts the focus from their entire character to the specific behavior you want to address, making it easier for them to accept feedback without feeling attacked. Another powerful communication tool is asking open-ended questions. Instead of barking orders or giving lectures, try, "What do you think is a fair solution?" Or, "How do you think we can avoid this problem next time?" This forces them to think about their actions rather than just react to your authority. The goal is to create an atmosphere where your child understands that communication is a bridge, not a battlefield. By showing them respect, even in moments of conflict, you teach them by example. You demonstrate that respect is not earned through fear, but through mutual understanding. When you master this skill, you'll notice something powerful. Arguments get shorter, understanding gets deeper, and the space for toxic behavior gets smaller. Protecting your mental and emotional energy, parenting a toxic child can feel like carrying a weight that never gets lighter. If you're not careful, the constant negativity, arguments, and emotional tension can drain you to the point where you have nothing left to give. That's why protecting your own mental and emotional well-being isn't just important, it's essential. You can't show up as the strong, patient, and wise parent your child needs if you're running on empty. The first step is to recognize that self-care is not selfish. Many parents feel guilty about taking time for themselves, especially when their child is struggling. But the truth is, your child benefits when you are mentally stable and emotionally strong. Just like a pilot puts on their own oxygen mask before helping passengers, you need to secure your own mental balance before you can guide your child through theirs. Start by creating emotional boundaries for yourself. This means learning to separate your child's behavior from your sense of self-worth. If they lash out, it's not a reflection of your value as a parent or person. Toxic children often use hurtful words to provoke a reaction. You have to remind yourself that these words are driven by their own struggles, not by the truth about you. Next, establish non-negotiable personal time. Even if it's just 15 minutes a day, have moments where you are not on duty as a parent. Use this time to recharge, whether through exercise, reading, meditation, prayer, or simply sitting in silence. These moments of peace act like emotional fuel, helping you handle the next challenge with more patience and clarity. It's also crucial to have a support system. Talk to friends, family, or support groups who understand your situation. Sometimes simply being heard and validated can lighten your emotional load. If possible, seek professional guidance from a counselor or therapist who can help you develop strategies tailored to your specific challenges. Another powerful tool is mindfulness. Toxic interactions can quickly pull you into a spiral of frustration or anger. Practicing mindfulness helps you step back and observe the situation without immediately reacting. It gives you space to choose your response rather than be controlled by the heat of the moment. Finally, remind yourself of the bigger picture. This is a season, not a life sentence. Children can and do change, especially when they're met with consistent boundaries, respectful communication, and a calm, steady presence. Protecting your emotional energy allows you to remain that steady presence, no matter how turbulent the moment feels. When you safeguard your own mental state, you're not just helping yourself, you're setting an example for your child. You're showing them that strength is not about never feeling stressed, but about managing stress in a healthy, controlled way. That lesson over time can be one of the most valuable gifts you ever give them. Teaching emotional intelligence. One of the most powerful ways to deal with toxic behavior in children is to teach them emotional intelligence. The ability to understand, manage, and express their feelings in a healthy way while respecting the feelings of others. Many toxic patterns in children exist because they lack the tools to handle intense emotions. They feel anger, frustration, jealousy, or fear, but have no constructive outlet, so those feelings explode into disrespect, defiance, or manipulation. The first step is helping your child identify and name their emotions. Many children operate with only two labels, happy and mad. But emotions are far more complex, and being able to name them gives power over them. Teach them to say, "I feel frustrated because," or "I'm anxious about," rather than just reacting with yelling or shutting down. You can model this by verbalizing your own feelings in a healthy way. "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, so I need a moment to think before I respond." The next step is showing them safe ways to express those emotions. For anger, that might be physical activity like running, hitting a pillow, or doing push-ups. For anxiety, it might be deep breathing, journaling, or drawing. The key is to normalize emotional expression while steering it into a constructive channel instead of destructive behavior. Another crucial skill is empathy, helping your child understand that their actions have an impact on others. Toxic behavior often thrives in self-centered thinking. Encourage them to consider questions like, how would you feel if someone spoke to you that way? Or, what do you think happened to your friend after you said that? Over time, this helps shift their focus from purely their own perspective to a more balanced view that includes other people's feelings. It's also important to teach self-regulation, the ability to pause before reacting. You can practice this through simple games or role-playing. For example, you might create a stop and think rule where they take 3 deep breaths before responding when upset. At first, they may resist, but consistent practice can rewire how they respond to emotional triggers. Lastly, praise progress, not perfection. Emotional intelligence is a lifelong skill, and your child will not master it overnight. Acknowledge the moments they handled a situation better than before. I noticed you walked away instead of yelling. That took a lot of control. Positive reinforcement builds confidence and encourages them to keep trying, even when they make mistakes. By teaching emotional intelligence, you're not just managing toxic behavior. You're giving your child tools they will use for the rest of their life. You're helping them replace emotional explosions with thoughtful responses, selfishness with empathy, and chaos with self-control. Over time, these skills can transform not only their behavior at home, but also how they navigate friendships, school, and eventually the adult world. Leading by example. Children learn far more from what they see than from what they hear. You can talk for hours about respect, self-control, and kindness. But if your daily actions contradict your words, your child will follow your example, not your instructions. This is especially true when dealing with toxic behavior. If you respond to their negativity with your own negativity, you're reinforcing the very pattern you want to break. Leading by example starts with emotional self-discipline. When your child lashes out, it's tempting to match their energy with your own frustration. But if you can stay calm, speak respectfully, and maintain control, you're teaching them, without a single lecture, that power comes from composure, not aggression. They begin to understand that strength doesn't have to be loud or hurtful. It also means living the values you want them to adopt. If you want your child to take responsibility for their mistakes, show them how you take responsibility for yours. If you lose your temper, don't just sweep it under the rug. Acknowledge it. I spoke too sharply earlier, and I apologize. I'll try to handle that better next time. This doesn't weaken your authority, it strengthens it, because it shows humility and accountability. The way you handle conflict with others is also a powerful lesson. If your child sees you resolving disagreements calmly with your partner, friends, or family, they learn that problems can be addressed without yelling, insults, or silent treatment. On the other hand, if they see constant shouting, sarcasm, or avoidance, they will mirror those same patterns in their own relationships. Consistency in your own boundaries is another key part of leading by example. If you set rules for your child but break similar ones yourself, it sends a message that boundaries are flexible depending on mood or authority. But when you live by the same standards you expect from them, whether it's honesty, respect, or keeping commitments, they see that the rules are not just for them, but for everyone. Small, everyday actions also carry weight. Saying please and thank you, treating waitstaff with kindness, keeping your promises, and speaking respectfully about others all shape how your child views acceptable behavior. Even the way you handle stress, whether you cope with patience or constant complaint, teaches them how to deal with life's challenges. Leading by example isn't about being perfect, it's about being intentional. Your child doesn't need a flawless parent, they need a consistent one. They need to see that growth, respect, and emotional control are ongoing processes that you're committed to as much as you expect them to be. When you consistently live the lessons you're trying to teach, your influence becomes stronger than their resistance. Over time, they'll begin to reflect the behaviors you model, and toxic patterns will have less space to grow. In the end, the most powerful way to change your child's behavior is to first change your own, avoiding power struggles while maintaining authority. One of the biggest traps parents fall into when dealing with toxic behavior is engaging in constant power struggles. These battles can turn into endless cycles of I win, you lose moments that damage trust and fuel resentment. Children, especially those showing toxic tendencies, often push boundaries to test how much control they have. If you react by trying to win every argument, you may end up losing influence, even if you win the moment. The key is to maintain your authority without making every disagreement a contest. Authority should be rooted in respect, not fear. When your child respects you, they're more likely to follow your guidance willingly. But when they fear or resent you, they may comply temporarily while looking for opportunities to rebel later. The first step to avoiding power struggles is choosing your battles wisely. Not every disagreement requires a showdown. Ask yourself, is this issue worth the fight? Sometimes, letting small things slide can preserve energy for the battles that truly matter, like safety, respect, and major responsibilities. This doesn't mean you ignore bad behavior, but you avoid overreacting to every minor challenge. Next, refuse to argue in the heat of the moment. Toxic children often escalate situations to pull you into an emotional tug-of-war. When you engage, you give them the satisfaction of controlling your mood. Instead, stay calm and state your expectation once, then step away. For example, I understand you're upset, but the rule stands. We'll talk later when we're both calm. This removes the audience for their drama and keeps you in control. Another powerful strategy is offering limited choices. Children resist when they feel powerless, but they cooperate more when they feel they have a say. Instead of commanding, do your homework now, you could say, do you want to do your homework before dinner or after? Both options lead to the desired outcome, but the child feels involved in the decision. It's also important to avoid reacting to bait. Toxic children may say things designed to provoke you, insults, sarcasm, or outrageous statements. If you take the bait, you're playing their game. Instead, maintain a neutral expression, respond briefly, and redirect the conversation back to the real issue. Over time, they'll see that their tactics no longer work, which reduces the frequency of these power plays. Finally, remember that authority is strengthened by consistency. If your rules change depending on your mood, your child learns that persistence or manipulation can bend the rules. But when your standards are clear and your follow-through is steady, your authority becomes predictable and respected. Avoiding power struggles doesn't mean giving up control. It means exercising it more effectively. By staying calm, setting clear expectations, and refusing to get pulled into unnecessary battles, you preserve your influence and create a home environment where respect, not conflict, becomes the norm. Rewarding positive behavior to reinforce lasting change. When dealing with toxic children, it's easy to focus almost entirely on correcting bad behavior. But if your attention is only on what's wrong, you miss powerful opportunities to strengthen what's right. Positive reinforcement, recognizing and rewarding good behavior, is one of the smartest tools you can use to shift patterns and encourage lasting change. The principle is simple. Behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. But the key is rewarding the right things. You're not just giving praise for existing. You're acknowledging specific, constructive actions that align with your values and expectations. This means being intentional about catching your child doing something right, even if it's small. For example, if your child usually talks back but chooses to express frustration respectfully, that's worth acknowledging. I really appreciate how you told me you were upset without yelling. This kind of praise is far more effective than a generic good job, because it tells them exactly what behavior earned the recognition. Rewards don't always have to be material. In fact, emotional and experiential rewards often have a deeper impact. Extra quality time, choosing the family activity for the evening, or simply receiving genuine, enthusiastic praise can motivate children far more than a new toy or allowance bonus. The goal is to make them feel valued for their efforts, not just for the outcome. It's also important to reward progress, not just perfection. Toxic patterns won't disappear overnight, but even small improvements should be noticed. If your child interrupts you less than they used to, or if they follow a rule without being reminded, let them know you see the effort. This keeps them motivated to keep improving instead of feeling like nothing they do is ever good enough. Another effective approach is to connect rewards to personal responsibility. For instance, if they consistently complete their chores without complaint for a week, they might earn the privilege of a later bedtime on Friday or extra screen time. Linking rewards to positive actions teaches that good behavior leads to more freedom and trust. However, be careful not to over-reward. If you give constant praise or excessive treats for every small thing, it loses its meaning and can even lead to entitlement. The idea is to make the recognition meaningful by reserving it for moments when your child truly shows growth, effort, or positive change. Lastly, balance rewards with consistent boundaries. Positive reinforcement works best when it's paired with clear expectations and fair consequences for crossing the line. This combination teaches that while good behavior is acknowledged and appreciated, negative actions still have predictable results. When done well, rewarding positive behavior shifts the focus from constant conflict to shared wins. It changes the home dynamic from always correcting to actively building, making it easier for your child to choose cooperation over resistance. Over time, they begin to seek the pride and connection that comes with doing the right thing, not just the avoidance of punishment. Managing your expectations and being realistic about the pace of change. One of the hardest parts of dealing with toxic behavior in children is accepting that change doesn't happen overnight. When you've been living in a constant cycle of arguments, disrespect, and emotional battles, it's natural to want a quick turnaround. But real, lasting change in behavior takes time, sometimes months, sometimes years. Managing your expectations is essential to avoid frustration and burnout. The first step is recognizing that progress is rarely a straight line. You might have a week where your child shows improvement, only to face a sudden setback the next. This doesn't mean everything you've done has failed. It's part of the growth process. Just like learning any new skill, children will slip back into old habits when they're tired, stressed, or tested. The key is to see setbacks as temporary detours, not dead ends. You also have to measure progress in small, realistic steps. If your child is used to shouting in every disagreement, expecting them to switch to calm discussion instantly is unrealistic. Instead, celebrate when they shout less or when they walk away before things get too heated. These small victories add up, and acknowledging them helps both you and your child stay motivated. Another part of managing expectations is understanding your child's unique pace. Every child is different. Some may respond quickly to new boundaries and communication styles, while others need more time to trust the process. Comparing your child's progress to another's is a trap that only leads to disappointment. Focus on their journey, not anyone else's. It's also important to remind yourself why you're making these changes in the first place. You're not just aiming for instant compliance. You're working to build long-term respect, self-control, and emotional maturity in your child. As consistent effort, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Think of it like planting seeds. You can't see the roots growing underground, but progress is still happening beneath the surface. Managing expectations also means being realistic about your own capacity. You are human, and you will have days when your patience runs out. That's normal. Give yourself grace, and don't let one bad day convince you that you're failing. The important thing is to get back on track the next day, rather than letting discouragement set in. Lastly, remember that change is not a one-person job. Involve your child in the process, and when appropriate, involve teachers, relatives, or counselors who can reinforce the same lessons. Having multiple positive influences increases the chances of success and makes the journey feel less lonely. By managing your expectations, you remove the pressure for perfection and focus instead on steady, sustainable progress. This mindset not only protects your own mental well-being, but also makes it more likely that your child will stick with the changes you're working so hard to guide them toward. Using consequences effectively without damaging the relationship. When dealing with toxic behavior, consequences are necessary, but how you use them determines whether they create growth or deepen resentment. The goal is not to punish out of anger, but to guide behavior through fair, consistent, and meaningful consequences that preserve the parent-child relationship. The first principle is to ensure consequences are logical and related to the behavior. If a child disrespects their sibling, the consequence should address that situation, perhaps an apology, extra acts of kindness, or helping with their siblings' chores. Random or unrelated punishments, like taking away a favorite toy for an unrelated offense, may stop the behavior temporarily but won't teach the underlying lesson. Timing is also important. Consequences work best when they are immediate and connected to the moment. Waiting too long to address the behavior weakens the cause and effect link in the child's mind. If your child knows that every action has a near-instant response, they begin to anticipate the result before making the choice. Consistency is the backbone of effective consequences. If you sometimes enforce a rule and other times let it slide, you're training your child to gamble with your boundaries. Toxic patterns thrive in inconsistency, so stick to the same rules every time, even when it's inconvenient. This predictability builds respect and trust, even if they don't like the rules. Equally important is your delivery. Consequences should be explained calmly, not screamed in the heat of frustration. A calm tone communicates authority without hostility, showing that discipline comes from a place of guidance, not revenge. For example, because you didn't complete your homework, you'll need to finish it before any screen time tonight. Tomorrow, let's plan a way to make sure this doesn't happen again. This approach keeps the focus on the behavior, not the child's worth. Avoid consequences that humiliate or shame. Public scolding, mocking, or comparing your child to others damages self-esteem and erodes trust. Instead, focus on discipline that allows them to reflect, make amends, and try again. A healthy consequence gives space for correction, not long-term emotional scars. It's also wise to pair consequences with opportunities for redemption. If they lose a privilege, allow them a way to earn it back through positive actions. This teaches accountability and hope, rather than fostering bitterness. For instance, you lost your video game time for today, but if you show respectful behavior all day tomorrow, you can have it back. Finally, end each consequence with a reaffirmation of your relationship. After the matter is resolved, remind them, "I love you, but I can't allow that kind of behavior." This reinforces that your discipline comes from care, not rejection. Over time, this approach strengthens the bond while still holding firm boundaries. When done right, consequences become tools for teaching life lessons, not weapons of control. They guide your child towards self-discipline while preserving the trust and connection that every healthy parent-child relationship needs, protecting your own mental health. While parenting a toxic child can be emotionally draining. The constant battles, disrespect, and tension can take a toll on your patience, your mood, and even your sense of self-worth. Many parents focus so much on managing their child's behavior that they neglect their own well-being, only to find themselves burnt out, resentful, and less effective as caregivers. Protecting your mental health isn't selfish, it's essential for you to remain strong and consistent. The first step is acknowledging that this is hard. You're not weak for feeling overwhelmed, you're human. Toxic behavior from a child, whether it stems from trauma, personality challenges, or learned habits, can push even the most patient person to their limits. Admitting the emotional impact allows you to address it instead of silently carrying the weight. Set boundaries not only for your child, but also for yourself. This means recognizing when you need a break and taking it without guilt. Even 5 minutes alone in a quiet space to breathe can reset your emotions. If possible, arrange for another trusted adult, like a co-parent, grandparent, or friend, to take over for a while so you can decompress. Another vital habit is self-care. This doesn't have to mean expensive spa days or long vacations. It means intentionally making time for activities that recharge you. Whether it's reading, exercising, listening to music, or going for a walk, these moments are not luxuries. They're necessities for your mental stability. It's also important to manage your own emotional triggers. A toxic child may know exactly what to say to get under your skin. If you can identify which comments or behaviors trigger strong emotional reactions in you, you can prepare to respond calmly instead of reacting impulsively. This not only protects your mental state, but also models emotional control for your child. Don't underestimate the value of a support system. Surround yourself with people who understand your challenges and can offer advice or just a listening ear. This might be friends, family, or a support group for parents dealing with similar issues. Talking openly about your struggles reduces the feeling of isolation and provides perspective. Professional help can also be a lifeline. A therapist or counselor can give you coping strategies, stress management tools, and a safe space to process your feelings. Sometimes just having a neutral person listen without judgment can lighten the emotional load. Finally, remind yourself regularly that your child's toxic behavior is not a reflection of your worth as a parent or a person. You can be doing everything right and still face resistance. Your responsibility is to remain consistent, loving, and firm, not to achieve instant perfection. Protecting your mental health ensures you have the patience, clarity, and strength to guide your child effectively. It's not about escaping the challenge. It's about making sure you're equipped to face it with resilience and hope. Seeking professional help without feeling like you failed. Many parents hesitate to involve professionals when dealing with a toxic child. There's a silent fear that asking for help means admitting you failed as a parent. But here's the truth. Seeking help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. It means you care enough to use every available resource to give your child and yourself the best chance at healing and growth. Just like you'd take your child to a doctor for a persistent cough, there's no shame in consulting a psychologist, counselor, or family therapist for persistent behavioral challenges. Emotional and behavioral issues can be complex, and sometimes they require tools and strategies beyond what you can reasonably know on your own. Professional help can come in many forms. A child psychologist can help identify underlying issues such as anxiety, ADHD, depression, or trauma that may be fueling toxic behavior. A family therapist can work with everyone in the household to improve communication, rebuild trust, and set healthier boundaries. Parenting coaches can give you practical, personalized strategies that fit your family's specific dynamics. It's important to choose the right professional for your situation. Do your research, read reviews, and don't be afraid to try more than one before finding someone who connects well with your child and your family. The relationship and trust between the professional and your child matter as much as their qualifications. When introducing the idea to your child, avoid framing it as, "You need help because you're bad." Instead, explain that everyone in life needs guidance sometimes, and this is simply another way of learning to handle emotions and relationships better. This prevents the child from feeling labeled or stigmatized. You should also be prepared to participate in the process. Often, profession. Owners will work not only with the child, but also with the parents to create a consistent, supportive environment at home. This isn't about pointing fingers, it's about working together to break unhealthy cycles. One common fear is, what if this doesn't work? The reality is that professional help is rarely an instant fix. It's a process, much like physical therapy for an injury. It takes time, consistent effort, and sometimes a willingness to adjust the approach. But even if change is slow, the insights and tools you gain can be invaluable. Remember that parenting is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and there's no shame in needing backup. Seeking help shows that you're committed to doing whatever it takes to help your child grow into a healthier, more balanced person. By letting go of the idea that you have to do everything alone, you give both yourself and your child a powerful gift, the chance to heal with guidance, support, and a fresh perspective. That's not failure. That's responsible, courageous parenting. Focusing on long-term relationship building over short-term control. When parenting a toxic child, It's tempting to aim for quick wins, silencing an argument, forcing compliance, or ending a conflict on the spot. These moments may feel like victories, but if they come at the cost of trust and connection, they're short-lived. The true goal is to create a relationship that can withstand the storms, one where respect is mutual and your bond lasts well beyond the years of discipline. Short-term control focuses on winning today's battle. You might raise your voice, threaten punishments, or use fear to get instant obedience. While this might stop the behavior in the moment, it often plants seeds of resentment. The child may comply outwardly but rebel in subtle ways later, or withdraw emotionally to protect themselves. Over time, they may see you as an opponent rather than an ally. Long-term relationship building takes a different approach. It focuses on the bigger picture, developing trust, open communication, and mutual respect, so that your influence lasts even when they're old enough to make independent choices. This doesn't mean being permissive or letting harmful behavior slide. It means disciplining in ways that teach rather than break the bond. One of the keys to this approach is connection before correction. When a child feels genuinely understood and valued, they're far more likely to listen. This might mean taking a few moments to validate their feelings before addressing the behavior. "I can see you're upset about what happened. I'm here to help you work through it, but we can't speak to each other disrespectfully." This preserves dignity while still holding the line. Another vital habit is consistency. A relationship built on trust thrives when children know you mean what you say and follow through on both promises and consequences. If your rules are clear and enforced fairly, your child may push boundaries less because they understand the stability behind them. It's also important to keep the focus on teaching life skills. Instead of just punishing mistakes, use them as opportunities to build emotional intelligence, problem-solving skills, and accountability. For example, if your child lashes out in anger, help them identify the trigger and find healthier coping strategies for next time. This transforms discipline into preparation for adult life. Shared positive experiences are another pillar of long-term relationship building. Make time for activities that have nothing to do with discipline, playing games, cooking together, or simply talking about their day. These moments strengthen the bond so that during conflicts, the foundation of love and trust remains intact. In the end, your role as a parent isn't just to control your child's actions, it's to guide them toward becoming a capable, respectful, and compassionate person. That kind of influence lasts a lifetime. When you focus on connection over control, you're building something much stronger than obedience. You're building a relationship they'll value long after the toxic patterns fade, modeling the behavior you want to see. Children are constant observers. Even when they seem uninterested or defiant, they are watching you, studying how you handle stress, how you treat others, and how you react when things don't go your way. In many cases, toxic behavior in children is either reinforced or diminished by what they see modeled at home. That's why one of the most powerful tools for transforming a toxic dynamic is to become a living example of the values you want them to adopt. If you want your child to speak respectfully, you must consistently speak respectfully to them and others, even in moments of frustration. If you want them to handle conflict calmly, you must demonstrate calmness when disagreements arise. Children may resist rules, but they are far more likely to internalize behaviors they see lived out consistently. This doesn't mean pretending to be perfect. In fact, showing vulnerability can be incredibly powerful. When you make a mistake, maybe you raise your voice or act unfairly, admit it and apologize. This teaches humility, accountability, and the understanding that being wrong doesn't make you weak. It shows them that relationships grow stronger when both sides are willing to take responsibility. Another important aspect of modeling is emotional regulation. A toxic child often struggles with impulsive reactions and heightened emotions. If they see you respond to stress with yelling, sarcasm, or avoidance, they learn that those are acceptable coping strategies. But if you demonstrate deep breathing, pausing before responding, or calmly expressing your feelings, you're giving them practical tools for managing their own emotions. Modeling also applies to self-respect and boundaries. Show your child that you value yourself by maintaining your own mental health, saying no when necessary, and treating your time and energy as important. This teaches them that respect is mutual. You respect them, but you also expect respect in return. Your daily habits speak louder than lectures. If you value honesty, be honest, even when it's inconvenient. If you value empathy, show kindness to strangers. If you value perseverance, let them see you work toward your own goals without quitting when things get hard. These lived examples sink in far deeper than verbal instructions. It's worth remembering that modeling behavior doesn't produce instant results. Your child might still push back, test limits, or cling to toxic patterns for a while. But over time, consistent examples create an environment where healthy behavior feels normal and expected. When they see you live with integrity, they're more likely to adopt those same principles, even if they resist at first. Ultimately, parenting isn't just about shaping your child's actions, it's about shaping their character. And the most effective way to do that is to embody the very qualities you hope they will carry into adulthood. You may not always feel like they're paying attention, but trust me, they are. And one day, those seeds you've planted through your example will grow into the kind of behavior you've been working so hard to encourage. Dealing with a toxic child is one of the hardest tests a parent can face. It's emotionally draining, mentally exhausting, and can make you question your abilities. But through this journey, one truth stands out. You have more influence than you think. The smartest way to deal with toxic behavior isn't about overpowering your child, breaking their will, or forcing instant obedience. It's about combining firm boundaries with empathy, patience with persistence, and guidance with example. Every strategy we've discussed, staying calm, setting clear rules, protecting your mental health, seeking help, focusing on connection, and modeling the right behavior, works together like pieces of a puzzle. Alone, each one makes a difference. Together, they transform not just your child's behavior, but the entire relationship dynamic in your home. There will be setbacks. There will be days when you feel like nothing is working. But those are the days that matter most, because how you respond in those moments teaches your child the lessons they will carry for a lifetime. Every time you respond with composure instead of anger, every time you enforce a boundary without cruelty, every time you choose connection over control, you're building a foundation that will outlast the storms. Remember, toxic behavior often comes from a place of pain, confusion, or unmet needs. You may not be able to fix everything for your child, but you can create an environment where healing is possible. You can be the steady hand that guides them through their own chaos, showing them by example what respect, responsibility, and resilience look like. And here's something powerful to keep in mind. Your role as a parent is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. You won't always get it right, but if you keep showing up with love, boundaries, and patience, you will make a difference. It may not show today. It may not show next month, but over time, you will see the results of your commitment. Even if your child resists now, there will come a day when they look back and realize that your firmness wasn't rejection, it was protection. That your boundaries weren't punishment, they were love. And that your refusal to give up on them, even when things were at their worst, was the greatest gift you ever gave. So stand firm, stay hopeful, keep building that relationship one decision, one conversation, and one example at a time. Parenting a toxic child isn't about winning battles, it's about winning their trust and helping them win at life. Ending hook lines. Because one day, they won't just remember what you said, they'll remember who you were when it mattered most. And that will be the difference that changes everything.